Every young adult that comes into the Army ought to expect that they're going to serve under talented leadership and that they're going to have the best odds of success. In the final analysis, armies are about combat. We do a lot of other things, but combat is our first mission. And if we don't bring the right leaders to bear, the costs are clear. It doesn't take a lot of imagination. You can look at photographs from the Civil War, you can look at photographs from World War I. You can read history. We know what happens. Lives are lost. Sometimes untold numbers of lives. If you look at the first day on the Battle of the Somme, 60,000 lives. Why would we put up with that if we could do better?
Talented officer leadership really is non-negotiable for the United States and for its Army. Good isn't good enough. It's not enough when you're leading sons and daughters in a life and death struggle. If a car salesman has a bad day, the cars stay on the showroom floor. If an educator has a bad day, maybe the students don't get the lesson. When Army officers have bad days, quite possibly soldiers die unnecessarily. The national treasure is expended unnecessarily, and our national security is placed at risk.
The problem right now for the Army Officer Corps is that it lacks a strategy. Our framework for a future strategy is pretty clear. We want to assess, develop, employ, and retain talent. Everything hinges on this notion of talent. We define talent as the intersection of skills, knowledge, and behaviors. When you bring skills, knowledge, and behaviors together, that's the essence of what makes an individual unique. The Army has in its manuals that it's after competent officers. We argue that it's not about competent. It's not about meeting minimum standards. It's not about the average. It's about the exceptional.
When you go to see a doctor, if your kid's really sick, you don't want a competent doctor. You want the best doctor you can find, the most talented doctor. Anywhere where life and death is in the balance, victory and failure, this is where talent matters.
Talent captures the imagination, doesn't it? Talent excites people. Competency doesn't. We shy away from it everywhere except in Army field manuals and doctrine, where it rains down upon you.
We can do better. We have the ability to find the talent, build the talent, provide that talented leadership, so we can complete the promise. When we ask you to send us your kids, we will give them the best leadership we can provide.
Time to convert the industries of peace into war. Time to make planes and more planes. Time to make guns and more guns. Shells and more shells. Tanks and more tanks.
The Army that we have today inherited a lot of its practices from World War II, really. And that was an industrial era war, attrition war, lots of materiel, lots of people. The standards were interchangeability. Give me 16 million men under arms.
There's a tendency for bureaucracies to do things in an industrial fashion because they're big, because they've got to produce a lot of things. And because assembly lines are conducive to interchangeable parts, essentially the Army becomes this one big assembly line. And so there's a culture that has emerged from the industrial era, which is we treat everybody as an interchangeable part.
And you really can't manage people that way. People are not pegs that you can just slap into a hole. They're more like puzzle pieces when you think about it. The distribution of things that they can do gives each one of them a different shape. The challenge is finding where to put that puzzle piece so that it gives you a good fit, so that it gives you those enduring bonds. The pieces are interlocking.
Just as the civilian economy has moved from the industrial era to the information era, in order to keep pace, the Army must do the same thing. And it must move away from the interchangeable parts, the assembly line, that approach to human management, and move on to talent management, which is focused more on the uniqueness of the individual and how you apply that individual's skills, knowledge, and behaviors against specific jobs.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the
A U.S. air flight lands with no power in the Hudson River. Everyone on board survives. And what did they call that? Immediately, within an hour, we're hailing it as the miracle on the Hudson. And why are we doing that? It's because what Captain Sullenberger did exceeded anyone's wildest expectations.
Competent pilots can land a plane in normal conditions, but it takes a talented pilot who, after hitting several birds, dodging a bridge, can land a plane successfully in an icy Hudson River.
Captain Sullenberger was in the right place at the right time doing exactly the right thing. He's talented. He figured it out.
How do we get the right leader in the right job at the right time to make the difference? We don't want to just leave it to luck. Don't want to leave it to chance.
The key to translating individual talent into organizational success is to get clean job matches. What we propose from a management perspective is a model where you essentially have a supply and demand for talent.
The Army's really got to do two things. It has to know the talent that's actually in demand right now, and it has to know the talents that it possesses right now. And then it's got to manage the balance of those two. And if it does that, it will be equal to any challenge that it faces.